black people are not the original inhabitants of South Africa, which, in fact, they're realizing that now. When they claimed that they owned all the land, the original inhabitants, of whom there are not many left, said, excuse me, no, we were the original inhabitants. You guys were migrants here as well, which they were. I mean, one of the things about Africa is it's very empty. Up until the 1950s, Africa was very empty. It's the population exploded because white colonists, the naughty white colonists, put hospitals there, and there's been this huge population explosion since the 1950s.
Royal and humble greetings to each and every one. Someone sent me this video of this white gentleman telling lies about our history. Now, before I play this clip, I want you to keep in mind that the Afrikaners are descendants of the Dutch people from Netherlands, Germany, and so on. But they do not identify themselves as Dutch, rather choose to identify themselves as Afrikaners because they want to lay claim to the land. Hence, they made up this new identity, because Afrikaners in English means Africans. So they make up this Khoisan identity to support their false narrative that the black people or the Bantu people are also settlers here, just like them. This gentleman says that the Khoisan were the inhabitants of the whole Southern Africa. Now, the Southern Africa includes Angola, Malawi, Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. He also went on and said that the black people originated in Cameroon and that the Khoisan are not black. I don't think he understands the term black. But let me play this video so you can hear for yourself.
The original inhabitants of Southern Africa are called the Khoisan. In the West, the Bushmen are Khoisan. Hottentots are Khoisan. But you can't use those words anymore. You now have to call them Khoisan. Okay? All right. Now, and they were the inhabitants of the whole of Southern Africa. So the whole of South Africa at one stage were Khoisan. The black people originated in what is now Cameroon. That's where they...
Hold on, Khoisan aren't black?
No.
What are they?
They're a completely separate ethnicity all on their own. In fact, if you look at them, they're kind of yellowy. They're a light brown yellow color, right. But they look more Asian than African. They do not consider themselves African.
Interesting.
When the white guys arrive in Cape Town, so 1652 is when Dutch guys arrived there. At that stage, you could have divided South Africa almost exactly 50-50, what's now South Africa. The western half of the country was entirely Khoisan. There were no black people there. None at all. Only Khoisan. So we're Cape Towners, all that area, Khoisan people. The northern part of the country did have black people. They'd started arriving, and they were still migrating.
How long had they been there in the northern?
Well, it's a moot point, and people have debated it. It would seem that black people had probably started arriving in the northern parts of South Africa, maybe 1,000 years, something like that, about 1,000 years before whites got there, right up in the north, okay? And they've been slowly moving south because it's an empty space. I mean, one of the things about Africa is it's very empty. Up until the 1950s, Africa was very empty. It's the population exploded because white colonists, the naughty white colonists, put hospitals there, and there's been this huge population explosion since the 1950s. But Africa was really very empty up until then. And so tribes moved around and just occupied new empty territory. So the guys coming down from the north, who called the Bantu, it's called the Bantu expansions, when black people came out of the Cameroons, they'd been occupying South Africa and moving systematically south, down the east coast of South Africa.
They were pastoralists, am I right?
Yeah, they were pastoralists, yeah. Whereas the Khoisan were hunter-gatherers. They were like aboriginals, okay, so they hadn't become pastoralists yet. The black guys are migrating down from the north and settling, doing exactly what white guys are doing. So white guys, the Dutch guys from Cape Town, were settling by moving eastwards. So the white guys are moving from Cape Town eastwards, and the black guys are moving down from the north. And they met at a place called the Fish River, which is now in the middle of South Africa at a place called, it's still called Border. Everybody in South Africa calls that part of the country the border, even though there's no border there at all anymore. But there was a river called the Fish River, which is where blacks and whites first encountered each other. And then it started 100 years of warfare between whites and and the Xhosa, who were the tribe that they met there. So now at that point, that would have been in about 1700. So whites and blacks first encountered each other in 1700. Okay, so whites had already been there for 100 years at that point.
I wanted to do a video responding to all of this, but then I thought, let me hear what my African people have to say. Do you agree or disagree with this? Which part of it?
The propaganda and lies that he's using is from a theory that is known as the theory of Bantu migration. The theory of Bantu migration is not a fact. It is a theory. It is propaganda that was developed and popularized by Richard Leakey, an Englishman who gave this term in the 1920s of the Bantu migration from East Africa that spread humanity throughout the world. And this theory was given in order to try and justify colonialism. The word Bantu itself did not exist before 1856 when it was coined by a German, Willem Bleek. And he coined this word to try and justify the colonization of Namibia by Germans after Europeans left Europe, where they had destroyed their environment, eaten all the animals, including their hyenas and lions, finished all their mineral resources in the ground because of the Industrial Revolution, and then polluted their air and water that they could no longer live and began to fight each other. Because of this, the Pope in Europe decided to give Europeans the right to go and look for new lands. And so they came to Africa. And because they needed to steal our land resources, cows, and labor, they began to come up with the theory that there was something called a Bantu migration from the center of Africa to all parts of the world. And therefore, this was their justification of them coming back onto the continent and colonizing our people and stealing what is ours. But have you ever asked yourself a simple question? If Bantu migration is the migration of all humanity, why is it that Europeans don't call themselves Bantus? Why is it that the Khoi and the San, who are also human, did not come from the center of the cradle of mankind in the same place where all humanity came from? Are they saying the Khoi and the San are not human beings? And why is it now we're hearing that there's a new theory that says that humanity actually started at Kraaifontein here in South Africa? Truth of the matter is no one knows where humanity came from. But when we go into science and we use genealogy and we look at the genes of people, it has been proven beyond reasonable doubt that all the tribes in Southern Africa, underneath, starting from Congo coming down, we are one people. Our cows look the same. Our chickens look the same. Our goats and sheep look the same. That's why you do not have Ankole cows in this part of the world. This is why you've got the Nguni cows that are similar to the Matebele cows, that are similar to the Mashona cows in Southern Africa, but you don't find the same cows in other parts of Africa because there was no migration from that center to here, because then we would have Ankole cattle. The reason why a Nigerian looks distinctly different from a Congolese, and a Congolese looks distinctly different from someone from Kenya, and the Kenyan looks distinctly different from someone that comes from Rwanda, and a Rwandan looks distinctly different to a Zimbabwean, and a Zimbabwean looks distinctly different to a South African and a Tswana, is that we were given diversity by the creator of this world because we come from different centers. If we came from the same place, we would look all the same. Now, some people are going to say, but listen to the dialects, they're more or less the same. Well, today everybody talks about Nyash. Everybody talks about Mujolo. We all talk about Dololo. These are words that we're learning because of trading with each other, because of living among each other, not because we used to be one and the same people. And if we were one and the same people, our languages would have remained very much similar and not as different as they sound. The reason that we even have different writing systems, Adinkra, Proto-Sahara, Harisorobe, they're all different because we were different people. God made us diverse for a reason. Even Europeans are diverse. So run away from this miseducation that we are Bantus. There's no word called Bantu in most African languages. Even in the Nguni language, it is not called Bantu, it is called Abantu. So let's stop the lie. We are not Bantus and we did not come from the same place and migrate.
The other part that stood out for me is this one.
So the white guys are moving from Cape Town eastwards, and the black guys are moving down from the north. And they met at a place called the Fish River, which is now in the middle of South Africa at a place called, it's still called Border. Everybody in South Africa calls that part of the country the border.
During the First Frontier War in 1780, the Cape Governor made a declaration that the Great Fish River is the eastern border of the Cape Colony and sent Adrian van Jaarsveld to force the Xhosa people to move east of the river, meaning those people were already long established on the other side. But let me know what you think on the comment section.
This is the Brak River. We are now in Mossel Bay, right? This is Tungwa's Kraal. This is now beyond Mossel Bay. Tungwa is a Gunukwebe royal. He's the father of Gama and Pato and Kona and Kobe. He lived here beyond Mossel Bay. This is where Amalkunukwebe came from. They were driven through all these rivers. This is Gamtus, we are now in Jeffreys Bay. This is Swarkops, you know where Swarkops is. This is Kucha, you know where Kucha is. This is Sunday's River, this is in Colchester. And they were driven through Bushman's River, through Ngoba, this is the Kaiskama River, and this is Niba. This is the land that was contested because they were driven up to here. When they got here, then there was no other way but to fight.